But many, many people have hurts and pains, unresolved problems, which they've never told anybody about in the past. And one of the things that happens with older people, these come up to the surface.
Do they know it comes up to, or is it something that you have to be aware of? Because I mean, my mother went through something of similar situation, and she would usually remember me, wouldn't always remember all the family, and you know, and all sorts of weird things would happen, and nothing ever came up that you would feel she was saying this happened to me, although I do know that she had a hard life when she was going there. Is it therefore they may not themselves say to you, this is what happened to me, but you're aware of something because of the way they're acting now? Absolutely.
Well, it's the same as you and I. Actually, what you believe is led out by your behaviour, not by necessarily what you say. I mean, it's your saying and behaviour. And so in this situation, yes, if she had had a problem which was unresolved, it's not the problems. We all have problems in life. We all have difficulties. But it's where we've had a difficulty and there hasn't been the love and support that's enabled us to process it properly, talk it through with others, have maybe some prayer if you're a Christian, that actually you've taken that problem and buried it away deep in the recesses of your mind and ignored it. And sometimes when people become older and then have mental illness, it happens actually with normal people.
Yes, yes.
That suddenly something from the past bursts forth into your present conscious reality and actually causes breakdowns and disturbs people. It happens in 40s when people are going through crises in their life and things like this. And these triggers can open the doors. Now this can happen also with older people. And I've learned working with older people, especially in homes, that some of their behaviour and their aggression or their fear that sometimes happens is because they're relating it back to something in the past.
With somebody obviously that has the full faculty of their mind, you could talk that through, you could pray with them, whatever. Maybe you can't do that quite the same way
with somebody. Well, they don't even.
But can you? Do you find, therefore, just that you really pray for them, that the Holy Spirit heals, so it really is praying for them, even without the awareness of what of them responding to you?
Well, absolutely, that's quite true. Because if you've got genuine full Alzheimer's disease, you won't even remember that you're being prayed for. That's just happened. So it has to be God. So that whether it's a deliverance, whether it is praying for healing of the memories, whether you're asking God's love to reach into their hurting past, you have to pray for them, and that has to be done and supernaturally. And God has to show up to do anything in this situation.
It's a commitment, isn't it? I mean, this is not the sort of thing you can just do and think, oh, I'll do it today and I won't do it next week or the week after. It's something that you've really got to know God's given you to do, that you are there to minister to some of these people.
Yeah, it's not easy, and people are very difficult to talk to, especially, I mean, it's very frustrating if you know someone well, and in your own experience, and then they don't always they look at you thinking, who are you? What are you doing here?
It's very tough, isn't it?
And yet you're their son.
Yes.
Incredibly difficult.
Yes.
Terribly hard. And because their memory banks are not recording that you're part of their life.
That's right.
And to minister to people like that is difficult, and it has to be prayer.
And both sides need support,
absolutely,
don't they, at that time? And people deal with that differently, because some people are stronger to cope with that than others. But some people, it can really upset them, and therefore the church needs to understand both sides of it, doesn't it? And minister into these situations. And you can't always say, oh, go and get yourself sorted out, God's the answer. Well, he is, but how practically do I prove him in that situation, so I know he is, and this person that may be hurting you. I mean, the point that you made, I actually did know a situation like that of somebody that was, thought they were actually married to somebody else or going out. I mean, that was so tough for the wife when they came in.
Well, I think it's partly understanding what's going on, because if you think that they're just behaving like this because they're being bad or naughty or trying to get at you, which is often sometimes the way you feel. But once you understand that that maybe their mind has deteriorated so much that they haven't got even any memories of ever being married to you before, it's not surprising that they're starting to relate to somebody else. And because in Alzheimer's, one of the things that can happen is you can get a progression, a regression of memories. So the most recent memories disappear, then it goes further and further back, and you can talk to some people who, unfortunately, who ended up with severe brain damage through disease, who actually think they're, 18 or something like that. And so it's not surprising, if that's what they think they are, that they're going to behave like it, even though obviously they're not 18.
I found it very tough in the situation, because talking to the carers who really did care for my mother, no problem with that at all. What I wanted to do was keep disagreeing with my mother. What they said you do is you just got to go along with it. I found that hard.
It's incredibly hard because, of course, you want them to love you, you want them to relate to you, you want them to be part of your life, but they can't anymore. And I think you have to understand that. And it can be very, very frustrating. And people do need understanding, in that situation. I have found it helpful to explain to people this is what happens and show them how they can still relate to them, but probably not as the same way as a wife or a husband or as a son or a daughter, because they cannot, if you're no longer in their life, in their memory banks, then you can't expect them to. Many of us actually have a relationship which we call a codependency relation. That means that I'll love you if you love me.
Right.
And then, but one of the problems, this can happen in marriage sometimes.
Right.
And so then when the other person appears to stop loving you because they're not able, it creates a crisis in your own life. And sometimes you need to look at that and have help and counsel and prayer. But that codependency relationship doesn't sound right anyway. Does it? Well, it isn't. I mean, in the real sense, we shouldn't be like that. But many of us need relationship. We're wired for it. The brain is made for relationships. And some of us have been, where we don't survive very well on our own, we survive with somebody else. And it is called codependency. And it is very difficult because when one of the dependent persons goes, the other person loses their meaning and purpose in life. Now, sometimes it may be God speaking to your life that you need to, this is an area you need to pray into and get help or professional help or counsel with. If you find yourself in this sort of relationship where when the other person has gone, you feel your life's gone as well.
Right.
And sometimes this can cause frustration with people, and because their emotions take over their own mind.
I had one email from Amanda that talks about the how thrilled she is to hear about this relationship between younger and older people. And I guess what we're saying here at the moment is that understanding is very important, because maybe they don't act exactly like we do. Maybe they don't see things exactly the same way as us, but we've got to understand where they are and what they're going through so that we can bridge that gap and have that relationship.
Absolutely. Older people don't think like we do. They obviously don't have the same values as we do. They have a different view on life. They've often got a lot of experience in life. They don't learn things very easily, and you can't talk to them like you may talk to your mates if you're a teenager, or treat them, or even as a 20-year-old. You have to treat them with respect and dignity, and the relationship, as I say, it's about like evangelism. You can't preach at them. The best way is to find out where God's been in their life before. Even if people who've not had any direct church experience, you can ask people a simple question: have you ever cried to God for help? And many people have cried to God for help in the war or in times of need, even though they've no faith, no background at all. And sometimes they've said, oh yes, and then you would say, did God do it? Oh yes, something happened positively. Well, that is a seed that is sown, and this is the way you relate. Secondly, I mean, there's someone was phoned up earlier. I think it was Paul, was talking about how he had found great help from talking to older people and learning from their wisdom, and was very encouraged with their relationship with God. I mean, this is something you can also find helpful for older people, rather than seeing them as people who have no more function in the church. I think the church needs to teach use older people and show respect to them.